I am very curious about your third slide, structure de l'écosystème de la recherche et développement sur les PRM. And I guess looking at the startups, looking at, as you put it, sort of the ecosystem of research and development on these nuclear reactors, can you speak a bit to the different companies and that are in the field, and sort of the likelihood that that these ARC and Moltex, which are going to be, which are already being funded publicly and are already in New Brunswick, that they would be able to I guess have a sector of the market. I mean, ARC this morning said that they're looking to corner 16% of the market. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know how companies come up with numbers like that. That would be a best case, like very best case estimate. But even 16% of a very small market would not be, I don't know, would that be enough to achieve the cost reductions through mass production of these reactors? That's my whole argument, is that the market is not likely to be large enough to allow for mass production. And then if you don't have mass production of these modular nuclear reactors, you don't have cost savings. They actually cost more to build because they're smaller. And so if you don't have the mass market, there's no business case for any of these reactors. And the point is moot, then we should move on to other technologies. And honestly, I don't think there's any chance of a market. Mr. Holland made me think that well, perhaps there could be national markets that would develop and protect smaller players in different countries. I mean, the US is the biggest, one of the biggest players in the world. Of course, they're going to pour a lot of funding into the sector. What if their companies can then take over the Canadian market? Well, ARC and Moltex and Terrestrial are not going to, they're probably going to be bought up by the large US players. Now, if the Canadian government is able to enact somehow border restrictions to moving these technologies, then ARC and Moltex would be favored in Canada. But then, would the Canadian market be large enough? I don't know. Mr. Holland was talking about other markets in Europe and elsewhere. And they're probably trying to develop them right now. But that's the same markets that the big US players are going to be competing for. And because I believe they already have a leg up in terms of funding and in terms of advancement of technologies, well, they're likely to corner the global market as well. So I don't really see a business case for funding small nuclear reactors in Canada.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's interesting, looking at how much funding may be needed to even figure out if this is doable. In the end, it's still not been done at a commercial scale. I have to say, you just mentioned potentially them being bought up in the future. We are still talking about startups and ultimately private companies that are looking to profit. I have a little bit of deja vu. This has got venture capital vibes. Joy Scientific comes to mind. I think we're a little closer to reality here, but I'm wondering about, they're looking to cash in. They're saying in the next decade, but you talked about potentially 2050 in terms of when this might be even possible to happen, and whether this is a good use of taxpayer money, of energy to go towards this compared to renewable energy. Can you speak more to that issue, please?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, given what I said, I don't think it's a good use of taxpayer money, of course. the good use of taxpayer money in the dire climate emergency we're in would be to put all the money into energy transition, into reducing electricity consumption, into energy efficiency. That's where all the investments need to turn right now, private, public, everything we can, because we're not looking like we're going to be peaking global emissions in 2025. There's some very optimistic scenarios that say it's still possible, but the optimistic scenarios are not what have happened historically. So that's where we're at. We need to halve emissions by 2030. That's 7 years from now. So we're not on that track. It's really important to put all resources to get us on that track as fast as possible. Now, to go back to the first part of your question, to talk more about the high technology markets, because this is a high tech market. We've seen that in the internet industry. We've had a bunch of startups, Skype being one, there's tons of others, and they end up being bought up by larger players or players who end up becoming larger as the sector develops. So ARC and Maltex and others, other startup strategy might as well be to develop the technology and then be bought up by another player that brings cash to the shareholders, to the owners, to the developers of the technology. That's what's been being done in most business fields. You start a small company and then you get bought up and you cash in. And you can retire or you can create more startups to start again. So it might be part of their, it might be their business strategy. What's certain is that there's going to be a concentration. The NASCM report in the US is already trying to inch the US government in that direction. They argue that at several places in the report that the US government should now pick a few winners to move forward. And that means the others are going to be left behind. And that's what the funding schemes have been partly, but the report makes it clear that it's now time that there's 10 or 12 different technologies. It's getting time to pick one if you want the field to go somewhere. Otherwise, you just have all these models competing, and we're not likely to see anything develop. Yep.
Okay, thank you. I do want to compliment you on providing us with 3 very clear slides. Sometimes we, get 200 of them. And so I do think that they're all very interesting. I'm wondering if you could, and the clock's running down, so I'll ask for 2 questions at once. Could you speak to around the investment costs, about the cost of different types of energy, and then your other slide looking at the projections of the International Energy Agency about where things are going in terms of different types of energy, please?
Sure, I can go back, go over the slides again. So the analysis for the levelized cost of energy, that's an authoritative report that's used by investors all over the world. So it's not my own analysis, but what how we read this graphic is that current nuclear is among the most expensive ways to produce electricity. And that's why there's not a huge nuclear market worldwide. There's only a few hundred nuclear power plants across the world. So that hasn't developed because it's too expensive. Now, the argument of the small nuclear reactor industry is that they're going to be able to reduce these costs and to make them competitive with other ways of producing electricity. And what I foresee is that that's not likely to happen because they're not going to be able to develop a large enough market for mass production, which is what would allow costs to go down. And so that's where we're at now. If costs don't go down, well, then small nuclear reactors aren't going to be just as costly to build and run as regular reactors or older models. And wind and solar and geothermal are going to be still going to be more cost competitive. And that's, I think, what the World Energy Outlook report shows. Their report is based on similar data, and they understand that because nuclear energy is so expensive to produce, it's not going to corner a large part of the global energy market. And it's the cheapest energy sources that are going to take over most of the market, as the second graph shows. In 2050, the prediction. These are all estimates based on modeling. It's not like the reality that's going to happen, but it's the best guess, I think, that we can get from these sources of data. And so what we see is that it's very likely that renewables will take over. And so if you have investments to do from a strictly business perspective, you go into renewables because the market is growing right now and it's going to keep growing even faster.
Okay, thank you. And I don't have very long left. So I guess maybe I'll ask you to briefly summarize. So the types of energy that you, from your research, would suggest that investments be made in would be renewables. Yep,
absolutely.
Okay.
Only renewables.
Okay.
And pull out investments from fossil fuels as fast as possible.
Okay. Ben, merci beaucoup pour votre temps. Merci.
Merci beaucoup à vous.
Merci, Madame Mitton, et merci, Monsieur Sapinski. Je vais vous remercier pour votre présentation aujourd'hui. Il y avait beaucoup d'informations et aussi, merci pour répondre aux questions de nos membres. Beaucoup d'informations, de bonnes informations et bien fait. À ce moment, si tu veux prendre un moment juste pour finir la présentation, quelques remarques.
Oui, ben, je peux ajouter quelques mots. Peut-être juste, je peux redire ce que j'ai déjà dit plusieurs fois. C'est que d'abord, je pense qu'il n'y a pas de business case pour l'énergie nucléaire de quatrième génération de petits réacteurs modulaires. Il y a beaucoup d'enthousiasme, comme je vois. Il y a des gens au gouvernement qui sont enthousiastes à propos de ça. Je souhaite aucun mal aux personnes de la compagnie qui ont présenté ce matin et qui vont présenter demain matin. J'aimerais beaucoup voir leur compagnie fleurir. Malheureusement, ce qu'on voit à l'analyse, c'est que les chances sont extrêmement faibles. Et donc, vu ces très faibles chances-là, pour le moins inexistantes même, ben ça vaut pas la peine de poursuivre la filière plus avant, je pense. Et donc, on devrait laisser ça de côté. D'autant plus que la filière nucléaire ne permet pas de faire face à l'urgence climatique dans le temps très bref qui nous est imparti maintenant. Donc, il faut transférer tous les investissements vers la réduction de la consommation d'électricité, la réduction, l'efficacité énergétique et, pour finir, les énergies renouvelables qui ne produisent pas d'émissions de gaz à effet de serre, qui ont quand même une certaine empreinte environnementale. On est au courant maintenant des coûts énormes environnementaux et sociaux des mines de cobalt, par exemple, les mines de tous les métaux qui sont utilisés pour créer des éoliennes, des panneaux solaires, des ordinateurs, des smartphones, etc. Et donc, c'est quelque chose qu'il faut aussi prendre en compte quand on réfléchit au portefeuille énergétique qu'on veut développer. Est-ce qu'on veut développer une société à haut besoin énergétique, où on a besoin de toujours plus d'énergie, qu'elle soit renouvelable ou non, ou est-ce qu'on veut réduire les besoins d'énergie le plus possible pour pouvoir garder le développement de la production d'énergie à un niveau raisonnable. Voilà. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde, à tous les membres du comité de m'avoir entendu.